Recognize Mr. Wittman.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank our witnesses. Ms. Oakley, you brought it out, I think, very succinctly and clearly. The names have changed, but the song remains the same. It has been the same for the last 2 decades. We know what we need to do. We just can't seem to find a way to get it done. We see issues with workforce. That's a continuing theme. We see an issue with design maturity, design completeness. We see an issue with maintaining the ships that we allegedly are supposed to be building. And we look at A sub O, operational availability, go down. I mean, all these things are mind-bogglingly simple, yet we can't seem to get to a place to address them. And Dr. Seidel and Mr. O'Rourke and Ms. Oakley, I want to begin with you. Give me your perspective. You spoke a little bit about this. You know, we talk about workforce, yet we have a maintenance industry that has roller coaster rides where lots of ships in the yard and then the ships disappear. We lay people off with the same skills that we need in the build yards, and yet we don't seem to want to integrate those two enterprises which use the same skill sets. We also, too, look at how do we make sure that we are getting designs complete? We know when we go to the yard, like Constellation class, it was going to be 85% complete. Uncertainty goes out the door, and yet we changed that, and now it's only 15% complete in design. I mean, we know what it takes to successfully entertain and execute these enterprises, yet we keep going back to the same place. Tell me, how do we make meaningful changes that will last and that will be transformational to what needs to happen both in the shipbuilding and ship maintenance industry, because you can't separate the two. They both have to happen the same way. Dr. Seidel, I'll begin with you, then go to Ms. Oakley, and then Mr. O'Rourke.
Thank you for that question, sir, and appreciate being here today to talk about this. Listen, I think first, importantly, the work that this committee has done supporting us with the Maritime Industrial Base Funds, previously the Submarine Industrial Base Funds, is a big part of what we're doing. We stood up the Direct Reporting Program Manager Office for the Maritime Industrial Base, the DERPA MIB, last September. This body has given us over $4 billion just in the last 2 years that gets at these issues. We are putting that money on the workforce hiring and retention issues. We're putting it on supply chain network issues. We're driving modernization and advanced manufacturing into the yards. You know, I will say this workforce piece, this atrophy of that sector, in my opinion, is fundamental to everything that we're talking about. We really have to find a way. I often say, back when I worked in the private sector, we were paying it was $3.35 minimum wage, and we were paying $13 an hour for manufacturing labor, 3 or 4x. Today it's 1.2, 1.3x. Yeah. We're trying to get after that, and I think, you know, I'll be quick here because I know we want other folks to be able to talk, but just in the workforce piece, we stood up buildsubmarines.com. We've had over 3 million hits on that since its inception, led to 2.5 million applications, 9,700 employees hired for the submarine industrial base in 23, a 40% improvement, another 10K in 24. Right. Real metrics, real progress. We're going to see that play out on the back end of this to drive production, but there's goodness happening. I
want to make sure I get to Ms. Oakley, yeah. Mr. O'Rourke. Ms. Oakley?
I'll be real quick.
Yes.
You hit the nail on the head with regard to the overlap between the repair and shipbuilding workforces and the industrial base. And that's why our recent report on the shipbuilding and ship repair industrial base recommended that the Navy put forth a strategy for how they're going to invest in both of these industrial bases to ensure that they're both going to be positioned to not only deliver the ships that we need, but also maintain and sustain those ships for our fleet. And then secondly, I think one important thing to note about design is that the Navy's own design workforce in-house has significantly atrophied as well. And I think that that's part of the problem that you're seeing with regard to reviewing the design progress and really understanding how mature these designs are before we're making these critical decisions. And I know they're focused on improving that as well, and I think that's a good approach.
Thank you. Mr. O'Rourke?
I'll make 4 quick points. First, of the various options in my testimony, the one that has the most promise for achieving results the soonest is the one that Dr. Labs has focused on, which is increasing wages. Second, the design issue on the frigate program is another workforce issue because Once you abandoned the parent design strategy, you threw that into the hands of the ship design community to redesign the ship. Well, we have a shortage of ship designers in this country, naval architects and marine engineers. So that's another workforce issue. And again, that's a wages issue, because these are engineers that could take engineering jobs in other parts of the economy.
Mr. O'Rourke, in deference to the chairman, listen, I want to take your additional 2 suggestions for the record. Mr. Chairman, are you back?
Please, if you will provide those.